All right, we're going to take a look now at our NBA draft prospects. We have the numbers 11 through 20 here. A lot of freshman conference players of the year. We have the Big 12 sixth man of the year here. Also, conference players of the year. It's amazing. There's a lot of talent in this year's draft. And you got to wonder, when you're looking at some of these student athletes and international players, you like to see who they compare to. Players that we're used to seeing day in and day out in the NFL. And that's why it is the perfect time to welcome in our NBA analysts here, and Kyle Boone and Adam Finkelstein. All right, fellas, we're going to talk about player comps here. So we're going to tip off the segment with Jeremy Sochan. So the 2022 Big 12 sixth man of the year. So Kyle, we're going to start with you, and then we'll kick it over to Adam. So name me a player that Sochan is comparable to.
Yeah, look, I typically shy away from comparing NBA draft prospects to future Hall of Famers, but I cannot resist here. He reminds me so much of Draymond Green when he was coming out of Michigan State. This is a guy who I think is the most versatile defender in the entire NBA draft class. He can guard ones, twos, threes, fours, and fives. I think that value proposition that he brings to the table as an NBA draft prospect is so tantalizing. That is the main comp here. Obviously, Draymond Green is one of the most versatile defenders in the entire NBA, a guy who can guard every position on the court. He's very switchable, has a high basketball IQ, and like Draymond, he has some real playmaking ability as well. We've seen kind of Golden State run its offense through Draymond Green at the high post and let him make decisions. Sochan's playmaking, his ability at his age and his position, at his size, I think can be a similar asset for an NBA team. He's a really good playmaker, especially at his position. So, I don't think he's a future Hall of Famer, but I think his versatility and his playmaking reminds me a little bit of Draymond Green.
Yeah, I think Kyle's scout is right on there. I went with a little bit of a safer pick. I went with Boris Diaw. Kyle knows I love those throwbacks. I'm a little bit of the old head here who likes to relive my youth. But Boris Diaw was a master of versatility kind of before his time, a front court player who had similar size to Sochan and could really pass the ball and facilitate. By the time he really developed a big reputation here with the Spurs, he had a different body type. This was later on in his career. Early on, he was a little more athletic, and I think Jeremy Sochan is every bit as versatile as Kyle described him as, but I think he's also got that playmaking ability, an outstanding passer from the front court who's going to be able to facilitate from different spots on the floor, a lot like Boris Diaw did back in his heyday.
I love we have a little old school, some new school. We'll have to see if that trend continues as we go down this list. So up next, we have Tai Tai Washington Jr., the freshman out of Kentucky, the man who broke John Wall's single game record with 17 assists when playing Georgia. So Kyle, give me a player comp for Washington Jr.
Yeah, it reminds me of Cole Anthony, a guard who came out of North Carolina, is with the Orlando Magic right now. Tai Tai Washington, really dynamic kind of two-way guard. He can play on the ball. This is a guy who was a five-star recruit coming out of high school as a point guard. But at Kentucky, he played primarily off the ball. This is a guy who played next to Severe Wheeler, who was kind of their primary initiator and their playmaker at Kentucky. Washington is a great outside shooter. He's got killer touch and finishing ability on his floaters. Good spot-up shooter, underrated passer and playmaker. You mentioned that he broke John Wall's assist record. That was when Severe Wheeler was not on the court. There's a lot of untapped potential, too, I think, with Tai Tai Washington as a playmaker. He can definitely develop in that area. I think he can legitimately play on or off the ball as a one or a two at the NBA level. That reminds me so much of what Cole Anthony has been able to do as an NBA player with the Magic. I think Tai Tai Washington's shooting, his cutting ability in the NBA, I think he can play multiple positions. That's going to be really valuable. And obviously, the value that Cole Anthony has brought to the table with the Magic, it reminds me a lot of what Tai Tai Washington can do as well.
So my comparison is coming with a little bit of caveat here because this is the JV version, if you will. So I've got Jamal Murray, but I don't mean to suggest that Tai Tai has quite the same upside. I think he plays a similar style, but if he ends up being the type of NBA All-Star that Jamal Murray is, it will certainly exceed most people's expectations. The similarities are based on the body type, the size, and the skill set. if Tai Tai Washington starts making 360 degrees layups in the bubble, then everything will have gone right. But what's similar to Murray is his ability to shoot the ball. This part of his game is almost a carbon copy. As I said, the body type, the shot-making ability, the floater game that Kyle mentioned. I also don't think he's a totally explosive athlete, and that was very similar to the scouting report on Jamal Murray, not just when he was at Kentucky, but prior to that in the high school ranks. So really reminds me of Jamal Murray light.
I love that there's a little asterisk right next to that. I guess with all these players, you kind of have to do that. Now let's think about a player comp for Malachi Branham. He's the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. So Kyle, your thoughts there?
Yeah, Malachi Branham is a guy who is one of the most gifted shooters and shot makers in this NBA draft. Reminds me of Bogdan Bogdanovic, who's with the Hawks right now. This is a guy who's a really versatile offensive weapon in the NBA. Really tough, smart competitor who can really score it at a high level. He's got good positional size, can create his own shot, really good getting to his spots and shooting pretty much from anywhere on the court. Last season with Ohio State, he was not really expected to be a one and done, but he was so good. Ohio State just absolutely had to turn to him down the stretch, even on a team with E.J. Liddell, who is also a future first-round pick in this year's draft class. The defense is going to be a question mark for Branham. I think that's a similar case with Bogdanovic. That's not his strong suit in the NBA. But his offensive punch is so electric that I think he's going to be a solid contributor for whoever drafts him in the draft on Thursday night.
So I went with a little bit of a different comp here, and it's rooted in their development. So I went Keldon Johnson with the Spurs. Keldon's a little bigger, he's a little stronger. But what most people don't realize about Malachi is that he wasn't a guard coming up the ranks. He was really more of a long-armed combo forward and undersized at that. So he exceeded all expectations this year at Ohio State, and he continued to get better as the season went on. Keldon Johnson with the Spurs is very similar. He was not a shooter in high school. People don't realize that because he makes shots so consistently now for the Spurs. But that to me is the parallel. Two guys that were kind of slashing combo forwards early on in their career, who because of their work ethic and their commitment to the game and really the kind of contagious energy level they bring to the game, develop themselves into shooters. So for Malachi Branham, I see a little bit of Keldon Johnson.
Yeah, and Malachi went off to end the season. He averaged 20.2 points per game in his final 10 games last season, showing what he's capable of. Now we're going to go from one conference player of the year to another. So now we have Jalen Duren, your 2022 AAC Freshman of the Year. So Kyle, who does he remind you of?
Robert Williams with the Celtics. This is a guy who, coming out of Texas A&M, was an elite prospect who ended up sliding into the late first round. I think there was some concerns that he was maybe one-dimensional. I think that's similar concerns with Jalen Duren. We know that he is an explosive athlete. You're seeing kind of some of the highlights here. He can finish above the rim as a dunker. He's an elite shot blocker, a very good defender. Robert Williams, it kind of fits the similar profile. He doesn't have a ton to his game. He relies on kind of his athleticism and his leaping ability to affect shots around the rim, to finish lobs around the rim. That's pretty much what Robert Williams has been able to do for the Celtics, the team, by the way, that just went to the NBA Finals, and he was their starting center. So I really like Jalen Duren. This is a guy who I have as a lottery prospect in this year's draft class. The athleticism, I think the untapped potential as a playmaker, especially at his size, all really, really impressive stuff. I think foundational pieces that will eventually make him an NBA starting center.
And just to play off that a little bit, as the Celtics made their run this postseason, I can't tell you the amount of people I had asked me, who is this year's Robert Williams? And I think to Kyle's point, we were all trying to figure it out. I've got Jalen Duren in a little bit more of an Andre Drummond type mode. I'm not sure he has the defensive versatility yet of someone like Williams. To me, he's more of that classic center with just absolutely elite physical tools. I mean, this guy is as powerful as you can possibly imagine. He's got staggering length. He rips the rim down almost every time he goes to dunk the ball. Like Andre Drummond, his physical tools are going to set him apart even at the NBA level. And also like Andre Drummond, the motor can be a little up and down. If and when Jalen Duren really commits himself to maximizing his full potential on a daily basis, he's got a chance to take his game to brand new levels. This is a guy who's one of the best prospects in the country as a high school underclassman. So I've watched him for years, and I just want a little bit more out of him.
You mentioned that high school underclassman, he was actually number 6, the 6th recruit in the class of 2021 high school class. That's per 24/7 Sports, and he's had a great year at Memphis. Now we've got one more accolade to talk to, another player that we're going to discuss right here, your Big Ten Player of the Year, and that's Johnny Davis. So Kyle, who is your player comp for the sophomore out of Wisconsin?
Yeah, Johnny Davis has seen a meteoric rise in his draft stock really over the last year. This is a guy who signed with Wisconsin as a sub-150 national recruit. He was not at all on the NBA draft radar, had a really strong summer leading up to his sophomore year, and then just completely exploded. Was one of the most explosive and productive players in the entire Big Ten and really in all of college basketball. Now he's going to be a 2-and-through player. Reminds me, the ascension is similar to another recent 2-and-through talent in Jarrett Culver, who was a top 10 selection just a few years ago. Culver has not quite panned out in the NBA. I'm still a believer, but Davis is a really versatile defender similar to Culver, who I think he can guard wings and guards because of his size. He was a really tough shot maker at Wisconsin who thrived in the mid-range. He'll need to improve his outside shot, I think, to stick as a role player in the NBA. But as a freshman, he was really good, particularly in that area. I think, as he takes kind of a step back into the NBA, this is a guy who I think has legitimate 3-and-D type of talent, who can be a really valuable weapon on both ends of the floor.
So the interesting thing to me about Johnny Davis is while he put up some huge numbers last year offensively, his overall efficiency wasn't that good. And as Kyle said, he's really at his best in the mid-range area, or at least so far. The other thing that stands out to me about Johnny Davis is just his mentality. He is ultra tough. And the DNA of a modern day role player is kind of the 3-and-D prototype. Johnny Davis, like Josh Hart, isn't yet a natural 3-point shooter, but he's so tough and he's so competitive and he plays both ends of the floor. I expect him to carve out a role in the NBA just like Josh Hart has.
Thanks so much for your time, guys. Davis, obviously coming from a successful family, his dad playing international ball for quite some time and got the motivation there. Also a twin brother. It's just fun to watch these stories, and we appreciate all the comps that you just gave us. Now we have some big days coming up in the NBA. The draft is tomorrow. That's June 23rd. And of course, free agency begins on June 30th. The Summer League is starting things up on July 7th. That's going to be coming to you from Las Vegas. And the schedule is going to be released mid-August. Obviously, we will be all over that here at HQ.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.